"Take your medicine," he would say every night, smiling the kind of smile that never reached his eyes. And every night, she swallowed the pills just like he wanted, because arguing only made him colder, and questioning him only made him crueler. She thought they were to help her sleep. She thought he cared, at least a little. But the headaches, the confusion, the weakness, none of it made sense. Until the night she didn't really swallow them. She let them sit beneath her tongue, waited, and pretended to drift off like always. Then, when the house grew silent and his footsteps crept back into the room, she saw something he had been doing for months, something that froze the air in her lungs and made her wish the lights had stayed off. And in that moment she realized the truth. She wasn't safe because she woke up every morning. She was lucky. This is the story of a woman who stopped pretending for one night and uncovered a secret that changed everything. Hello family, welcome back. Before we begin, I have a small but heartfelt request. Please subscribe. Your support is what keeps these stories alive. Every time you click that button, you're helping us share voices that would otherwise be forgotten and stories that deserve to be heard. And in the comments, tell us where you're watching from, because together we are not just telling stories, we are keeping hope alive. Emily Carter felt the shift in the house before she even stepped through the doorway. The Hawthorne home always looked perfect from the outside, like a catalogue page frozen in place, but inside it carried a tension that lived in the walls. She had learned to recognize the quiet signs of it, the stillness in the air, the way no one raised their voice, yet everyone spoke like they were guarding something. She felt it the moment she walked in from the grocery run Daniel had insisted she take alone. Daniel was in the living room, sitting on the edge of the leather couch with his elbows on his knees. His back stiffened when he heard her come in. He turned and smiled, but it was the smile she hated, the one that showed teeth without warmth. "You were gone a while," he said lightly. Emily forced her own small smile as she placed the grocery bags on the counter. Traffic was bad. Daniel's eyes stayed on her a second too long. It was never a direct accusation, just a quiet reminder that he liked to keep track of her. She pushed her hair behind her ear and busied herself with the bags, so she would not have to meet his eyes again. He stood and walked over, his steps soft on the hardwood. "You feeling better today?" "Mostly," she said. "Good. Tonight you'll get a full night's sleep, no more tossing and turning." A simple sentence, but her stomach tightened anyway. She nodded and forced her voice steady. "Yeah, that would be nice." He leaned in and kissed her cheek, a gesture meant to look tender, but his lips were cool. "Mother wants us for dinner later. Be ready by 7. Of course she did. Margaret Hawthorne never skipped an opportunity to assess her daughter-in-law the way someone might inspect a crack in expensive porcelain. Emily only said, "Sure." Daniel gave her shoulder a squeeze and headed upstairs. Emily waited until she heard the bedroom door close before she let out the breath she had been holding. Her hands trembled as she put away the groceries. Some days she felt normal. Other days she felt like she was living underwater, memories slipping through her fingers. She tried to remind herself that Daniel cared, that he checked on her, that the pills were supposed to help. But the headaches, the blurring thoughts, the strange hours she could not fully remember, none of it felt like help. She only had a few minutes to ground herself before she heard heels clicking across the floor behind her. Margaret.
"I thought you would still be out,"
Margaret said, her voice smooth and sharp at the same time.
Daniel worries when you're not home on time.
Emily kept her back straight.
I told him I'd be back before 6. Yes, well,
Margaret said, drifting closer.
he worries.
She ran a manicured finger along the counter, as if checking it for dust.
He has a lot on his mind these days. Work, family, appearances.
Appearances. That was always the word with Margaret. If something could not be displayed or praised at cocktail parties, it held no value. Emily tried to smile.
I know he does.
Margaret tilted her head.
Then help him by being steady.
She paused, letting the word hang like a soft threat.
He needs stability.
Emily's jaw clenched.
I try.
Margaret looked at her carefully.
Do you?
Before Emily could answer, the footsteps returned. Evan entered the kitchen, dropping his keys on the counter with casual loudness.
Hi, Emily.
His voice carried an easy warmth that felt out of place here.
Hey, Mum.
Margaret stiffened. Do not call me Mum in that tone. Evan grinned. Sorry, habit. He winked at Emily, but she could never tell if it was kindness or trouble. Maybe both. Margaret gathered her purse. Dinner at 7. Do not be late. Then she swept out of the room. Evan watched her go before giving Emily a small shrug. She's in a mood.
When isn't she?
He chuckled. Fair point. She waited for him to leave too, but instead he leaned closer, lowering his voice. You look tired. Emily hesitated.
I've been having headaches.
Again. She nodded. You told Daniel?
I tried, she said. He thinks it's stress.
Evan's expression tightened just a little, as if he was thinking of something he couldn't say out loud. Then he straightened and stepped back. Get some rest when you can. He left without another word, and once again the house fell into that strange silence. Emily finished cleaning up, then checked the clock. 1 hour until dinner. She walked upstairs, hoping a hot shower would clear her head, but the water only made her feel heavier. While brushing her hair in the bathroom, she caught her reflection and frowned. Her eyes looked a little duller than they used to, her skin a little paler. She knew stress could do that, but she hated how familiar this sinking feeling had become. Downstairs, she heard Daniel call her name. She stepped out of the bathroom. You ready? He asked. She nodded. He studied her closely. You okay?
Just tired.
That's why you need to take your pill tonight, he said gently. No skipping. Her chest tightened.
I wasn't planning to skip.
Good. He kissed her forehead. Trust me, I know what you need. Something in the way he said it made her throat go dry. She forced the unease back down and followed him out the door. Dinner at the Hawthorne house was always formal. Polished wood table, perfect lighting, soft music playing from hidden speakers. Emily sat beside Daniel while Margaret watched her like she was waiting for a mistake. Evan sat across from her, offering the occasional smile that felt like he was trying to soften the atmosphere. They were halfway through the meal when Margaret turned to her with that polite, cruel smile. Emily, dear, she said, I do hope you're managing better this week. Emily paused with her fork halfway up. Managing what? Margaret exchanged a look with Daniel. Your episodes. Emily felt her heart drop. She set her fork down slowly. What episodes? Daniel stiffened. Mother. I only meant, Margaret continued, that it must be exhausting, losing track of things, forgetting conversations, simple things slipping through your fingers. I cannot imagine how frustrating that must be for you. Emily felt heat crawl up her neck.
I never said I was having episodes.
Margaret arched a brow. Daniel told me everything. Emily whipped her head toward him. His face was calm, too calm.
Daniel.
He gave her a careful smile. I was worried about you. I thought getting another opinion might help.
Without asking me?
Her voice pitched higher than she meant. She forced it lower.
You told her things I didn't even tell you.
Because you forget things, Margaret said, lifting her wine glass.
You really should not blame him.
Evan shifted in his chair, his expression tightening, but he said nothing. Emily felt something break inside her. She picked up her glass only to realize her hand was shaking. She set it back down. Daniel slipped an arm behind her chair. Let's not make a scene. She swallowed hard.
I need some air.
She pushed her chair back and stepped away from the table. Margaret did not ask if she was okay. She simply reached for the next dish. Emily stopped in the hallway, gripping the edge of the wall. Her head spun, but not from the heat or embarrassment. Her heart hammered with something sharper. Betrayal, cold and clean. Daniel had told his mother she was unstable. He had painted her as fragile without ever looking her in the eye. She took a breath, then another, and returned to the table once she felt steady. Dinner finished with polite conversation she barely heard. When they finally left the house, she stayed silent the entire drive home. Daniel reached for her hand once they pulled into their driveway. You know she cares, he said softly. Emily pulled her hand back. I never told you I was forgetting things. You forgot that too, he said gently. She closed her eyes, fighting the twist in her stomach. Stop saying that. Emily, he said, his voice cool now, your memory has been off. You need to accept that so we can deal with it. She shook her head, barely more than a whisper.
I don't believe you.
His jaw tightened. Let's go inside. She followed him, every step heavy. She felt like someone walking down a hallway full of locked rooms, and behind every door was another truth she was not allowed to see. Inside, he headed straight to the bedroom, opened the drawer on his nightstand, and took out the small amber bottle. He shook a pill into his hand and offered it to her with the same controlled smile he always used. Take your medicine, he said. Her fingers trembled as she took it. She did not want to swallow it, but arguing only ever made him colder. She lifted the glass of water from the dresser and forced the pill down. Daniel watched her throat closely, making sure. Good girl, he murmured. Her heart cracked a little at that. She climbed into bed. He turned off the light. She lay there in the dark, her breathing uneven. The dizziness started sooner tonight. A wave of warmth spread through her limbs, followed by heaviness. Her eyelids dragged lower. The edges of the room softened into shadows. She heard Daniel on his phone, his voice low in the hallway, but her thoughts were already slipping. She tried to hold on, tried to stay alert for once, but the fog rolled in fast. Her pulse slowed, her vision dimmed. Then she caught it. A whisper. So faint she almost thought she imagined it. She won't remember, Daniel said quietly. She never does. The words slid into her drifting mind like a knife. Emily's breath caught. She tried to sit up, but the world tilted. She tried to keep her eyes open, but they fought against her. She clung to one thought, the only clear thing left inside her fading mind. Fear. Her last clear feeling was fear. And then? Emily woke with a start, her heart pounding before her eyes had even opened. For a second, she didn't know where she was. The room seemed too quiet, too bright. When she finally forced her eyes open, Daniel was already dressed, tying his watch strap with careful, precise movements. He glanced her way. "Morning." Her throat felt dry. "Did you come to bed late?" "No," he said easily. "You slept like a rock. I checked on you once or twice. You were out cold." Her stomach twisted at his choice of words. She sat up slowly, the blanket falling from her shoulders. Her head felt cloudy, like someone had shaken her mind while she slept. "I had a weird dream." Daniel didn't look away from the mirror. "You have a lot of those." "No," she said quietly. "This felt different." He shrugged. "Dreams are dreams. Don't read into it." Emily didn't answer. Her mind kept circling back to the whisper she thought she heard before she fully drifted off. She remembered the tone, the softness, the certainty. She searched Daniel's face now, trying to see if it held anything unusual. She found nothing but calm control. "Breakfast is on the counter," he said. "You should eat before the headache hits."
"What headache?"
He raised an eyebrow. "The one you always get in the mornings." Emily's chest tightened. She didn't remember telling him that. She couldn't remember if she'd ever said it out loud at all. Maybe she had. Maybe she hadn't. The uncertainty itself made her skin crawl. Daniel stepped closer and kissed her forehead. "Try to rest today. Stress is bad for your condition."
"What condition?"
she asked. He paused only a second before answering. "You know what I mean." She didn't. Not enough to put words to it. Not enough to argue without sounding like she was already losing her grip. Daniel gave her one last quiet look and then left the room. The moment the door clicked shut, Emily exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for hours. She pressed her palms to her eyes until flashes of light sparked behind them. She was tired of this fog, tired of second-guessing every thought, tired of wondering if the problem was her or if someone wanted her to believe it was her. She swung her legs out of bed, stood, and walked slowly to the kitchen. The breakfast Daniel mentioned sat on the counter: toast, berries, a small glass of juice. Perfect. Neat. The kind of breakfast someone prepared when they wanted to appear caring. Emily stared at it without reaching for it. Something inside her whispered that she should wait, that she should think. So she did. Her day passed quietly, but every moment felt stretched and uneasy. She tried to read but couldn't focus. She tried to nap but woke up feeling worse. By afternoon, the fog lifted just enough for her to feel the anger sitting underneath it. She had believed Daniel when he said the pills were for sleep. She had trusted him when he said she forgot things sometimes. She had even trusted him when he told her not to worry about the days that blurred together. But now she was starting to feel something different, something sharp, something dangerous. Doubt. When Daniel came home later that afternoon, he kissed her cheek like always. She let him, but she didn't lean into it this time. He didn't seem to notice. "Mother wants to talk to you tomorrow," he said as he loosened his tie. "About what?" His shrug was casual, practiced. "She said it's about the charity event. Don't worry about it." Which meant she should absolutely worry. Emily didn't reply. She kept her face neutral. She let him talk about his day. She laughed at the jokes she had learned to smile at. She followed the script. But inside, something else was happening. She was listening, watching, comparing every detail to the whisper she remembered. After dinner, Daniel walked her upstairs like he always did. He brushed his teeth. She washed her face. They changed into comfortable clothes. The routine was so familiar it ran like a pre-recorded tape. And then he opened the drawer again. The small amber bottle appeared in his hand. Her heartbeat jumped. "Ready?" he asked with a soft smile. Emily hesitated only half a second before nodding. If she refused, he would notice. If she questioned him, he would turn cold, maybe cruel. If she pushed too hard, he would say she was having another episode. So she cupped her hand and let him place the pill in her palm. He watched her like he always did, and she lifted it to her mouth like she always did. But tonight the fear that had gnawed at her was heavier, colder. She could still hear the whisper she wasn't sure she imagined. She never does. Emily put the pill on her tongue. Daniel handed her the glass of water. She raised it. She swallowed. He watched. She lowered the glass. Everything looked normal. Daniel turned off the light. He climbed into bed. Emily curled beneath the blanket and closed her eyes. She didn't fall asleep. Not yet. She let the pill slide beneath her tongue until it rested against her molars. She held it there, breath steady, jaw tight. The bitter taste crept across her tongue, but she forced herself to keep it hidden. Minutes passed. Her breathing slowed, smooth and even. Daniel's did too. She lay perfectly still, waiting, listening. The minutes dragged until she thought she might shake from the tension of holding herself so still. Then, finally, Daniel shifted beside her. He waited until her breaths turned into what he believed was sleep. Then he sat up. Emily kept her eyes closed. She felt the mattress lift as he rose. She heard him step lightly across the carpet. The bedroom door opened with a soft click. Her heartbeat thudded against her ribs so hard she feared it would betray her. She lay in the dark, unmoving, counting seconds. Her skin tingled. Her mind sharpened. She waited for the house to settle, for the footsteps to fade, for the silence to fall heavy again. And when it did, when the stillness wrapped around her like a cold blanket, she opened her eyes just a slit. She listened. She strained to hear the slightest sound. Then, from the hallway, she heard it. Daniel's steps returning. 3 slow steps, 4, 5, coming back into the bedroom, soft, careful, deliberate. Emily shut her eyes fully again, her pulse leaping beneath her skin. Daniel stopped in the doorway. The darkness shifted. Emily felt him watching her. And then she heard him move closer, closer. She felt the faint pressure of him leaning over her. She kept her body limp and her breaths slow. And just as she forced herself not to flinch, she sensed him reach out his hand toward her in the dark. Exactly then, before she could even guess what he was about to do, she heard him whisper something so quiet, she almost missed it, something that froze her blood in her veins. "She won't wake up this time." Her breath halted. Every part of her went still. He was close enough for her to feel his breath on her cheek as he whispered the next words, calm and certain. "She won't remember anything at all." Emily's mind screamed, but her body stayed still. She had to stay still. She had to pretend she was gone. She had to survive this moment. Her heart slammed against her ribs so hard it hurt. Daniel's hand moved toward her face. And then, everything in her went cold. Everything stopped. Because she finally understood. He wasn't checking to see if she was asleep. He was checking to see if she was unconscious, or worse. She lay frozen. She couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't... He leaned closer. The floor creaked beneath his weight. Then his shadow fell across her completely. And just as his hand brushed her jaw, the room went silent. Her fear roared in her ears, and that was the last thing she remembered before. If you haven't subscribed yet, we'd love for you to join our community by hitting the subscribe button. Through our stories, we build hope and give a future to children and women who have been abused all over the world. Motivate us by subscribing and turning on your notification bell so you never miss a story that matters. Also, let us know in the comments, where are you watching from and how did this story speak to you? Emily woke up the next morning with her heart pounding before she even opened her eyes. She didn't know how long she had been lying still, pretending to be asleep the night before. She remembered the sound of Daniel's breath near her cheek, the weight of his shadow leaning over her, the cold terror pressing on her chest. And then her memory just cut out, like someone pulled the rest of the night straight out of her head. Her eyes opened slowly. The room was bright, the curtains pulled open. Daniel was already up, sorting through his soup jackets like it was any other morning. "Morning," he said without looking at her. She didn't answer right away. She studied his profile, the smoothness of his movements, the relaxed tone in his voice. Nothing about him hinted that he'd whispered something terrifying beside her bed hours earlier. "You slept through the whole night," he added. "I'm glad." Emily's fingers curled around the blanket. "Did I?" "Yes," he said, like the answer was obvious. She forced her breathing steady. "I had another strange dream." Daniel paused, then smiled over his shoulder. "You always do." He said it casually, but she caught the tiny stiffness in his jaw as he turned. She watched him carefully now, every detail, every twitch, every quiet choice. Her voice stayed small. It felt real. Dreams feel real when you're stressed. He stepped closer and touched her hair. "This is why you need the pills. You overthink." A cold shiver slid down her spine, not from his touch, from how quickly he dismissed something she knew wasn't a dream. He left for work 20 minutes later, kissing her forehead like always. She waited until the door closed before she sat upright with shaking hands. Her mind raced. She couldn't remember the end of last night. Not 1 second. And that made her panic even more. She needed to stay alert today. She needed to pay attention to everything around her. She needed to stop letting herself get swallowed by fog. But the fog came anyway. It came when she was brushing her teeth and suddenly realized her toothbrush was in a different spot than she always left it. It came when she checked her phone and saw a text she had apparently sent Evan last night, even though she didn't recall typing it. "Are you awake?" Just that, but she never sent it. Another wave of nausea hit her as she stared at the message. Had she typed it while drugged? Had someone used her phone? Or was she losing more time than she realized? She set the phone down and pressed both hands to her temples. By midday, small inconsistencies began piling up everywhere. A mug moved to the wrong cabinet. A laundry basket she didn't remember filling. A voicemail she didn't remember deleting. She checked her calendar and saw a reminder she didn't set. Dinner with Margaret, 6 p.m. She sucked in a breath. She never wrote that. Her pulse quickened as she sat down on the couch, forcing herself to breathe. The house felt different now, like it was closing in on her, like the walls knew something she didn't. Around 3 in the afternoon, a knock came at the door. Emily jumped at the sound, her nerves stretched tight. When she opened the door, Evan stood there with one hand in his jacket pocket. "Hey," he said softly, "can I come in?" Emily hesitated, then stepped aside. "Sure." Evan walked in with a strange tension in his shoulders. He didn't smile the way he normally did. He looked at her like he was studying every inch of her face. "You look like hell," he said quietly. Emily swallowed hard. "Just tired?" "No," he said. "It's not that." She crossed her arms. "What do you mean?"
Evan glanced toward the hallway, then stepped closer. "Emily, I don't know everything, okay? But Daniel, he isn't who you think." Her pulse stumbled.
"Why would you say that?"
"Just be careful," Evan whispered. "That's all I'm saying." She stared at him, waiting for more, but he kept looking at the floor like he had already said too much.
"What do you know?"
Emily asked. He shook his head. "I can't. Not yet."
"Not yet?"
Evan ran a hand through his hair, nervous. "Look, he's my brother, but that doesn't mean I trust him."
"Evan?"
"I'm serious, Emily." His eyes rose to meet hers. "Watch yourself." He left before she could demand more. Emily stood in the doorway long after he was gone, her heartbeat refusing to settle. By the time Daniel came home, she felt like she was walking on a tightrope stretched over a drop she couldn't see. He kissed her cheek. She stiffened. "What's wrong?" he asked gently, brushing his thumb across her arm.
"Nothing,"
she said quickly.
"Just a long day."
He watched her for a second longer than he should have. Then he smiled. "Dinner with my mom tonight. Don't forget." Emily froze.
"I didn't know."
Daniel frowned. "Yes, you did. We talked about it yesterday." She forced a breath.
"No, we didn't."
He chuckled softly. "Emily, yes, we did. You're just mixing things up again." Her stomach dropped. She knew that was a lie. She knew she was right. But arguing felt like handing him the power he wanted. She simply nodded. Dinner was quiet but tense. Margaret examined Emily with her usual cold interest, like she was studying cracks in expensive glass.
"You seem distracted,"
Margaret said as she sipped her soup.
"I'm fine,"
Emily murmured. Margaret tilted her head.
"Daniel said your memory is slipping again."
Emily's throat tightened.
"He told you that?" "Of course,"
Margaret replied.
"He's concerned about you."
Emily looked at Daniel. His face was unreadable, calm, steady. "He shouldn't be telling you private things," Emily said softly. Margaret laughed once. "Private? Dear, when your husband is worried you're declining mentally, it stops being private." Emily clenched her jaw to stop herself from shaking. Evan sat across the table, silent again, but his eyes flicked toward her with something that wasn't pity, wasn't sympathy, something more like warning. Dinner ended with Emily barely touching her food. Daniel didn't comment on it. Margaret simply eyed her like she expected Emily to crumble any second. Back at home, Emily walked into the garage to grab a bottle of water from the mini fridge there. She opened Daniel's car door to check for her sunglasses, which she thought she might have dropped the other day. What she found instead was a small silver earring on the passenger seat. A woman's earring. Her breath caught. She picked it up slowly, turning it in her fingers. It wasn't hers. She didn't own anything like it. It was delicate, expensive-looking, and definitely not something she'd misplaced. Daniel walked into the garage at that exact moment. "Looking for something?" he asked. Emily clenched the earring in her fist. "What's this?" Daniel looked at it, then smiled. "Oh, that. It's my co-worker Laura's. She was in the car the other day when I drove her home. She must have dropped it." Emily stared at him. "Why didn't you tell me she was in the car?" "It slipped my mind." He shrugged. "Should I have filed a report?" Her breath hitched. "You could have mentioned it." "You're being dramatic, Emily." His voice softened like he was talking to a child. "It's just an earring." But something in his tone made her stomach twist. The explanation was too easy, too smooth, too rehearsed. He walked past her, leaving her standing in the garage with the cold metal biting into her palm. Later that night, she checked their shared bank account, or what used to be shared. Her heart stuttered when she saw the balance. 0. She blinked, refreshed the page. Still 0. Her hands shook as she walked into the living room where Daniel sat reading. "There's no money in the account," she said. He didn't look up. "I transferred it." "All of it?" "Relax." He finally closed his book. "We talked about this." She stared at him. "No, we didn't." "Yes, Emily, we did." His tone sharpened. "You said you wanted less responsibility. You said handling bills stressed you out. You agreed I should manage everything." "No, I didn't." "You forget things lately," he said softly. "That's not your fault. But you need to trust me to keep things running." Her chest felt like it was caving in. "Daniel, I never said any of that." He placed his book down and stood. "You did." "I didn't." He stepped close, lifting her chin with one finger. His voice dropped to a whisper. "Sometimes you confuse what happened with what didn't. It's part of the condition. And I'm not blaming you." Her breath trembled. "What condition?" His lips curled faintly. "See? You don't even remember the diagnosis." She jerked back. "There is no diagnosis." He sighed, long and tired. "Emily, please stop fighting me on this." She stared at him, her pulse thundering in her ears. He was rewriting her life right in front of her. And the worst part was how calm he looked doing it. After he went upstairs to shower, she sat at the computer again. Her hands hovered over the keyboard. Something inside her pushed forward, a whisper telling her to check everything, to look for answers anywhere she could. She opened her email. Her inbox refreshed. At the top was a new message. No subject line. No sender name she recognized. Her breath caught as she clicked it. 3 words glowed on the screen. "Check the pills." Her blood ran cold. Below it, one more line. "He's done this before." Emily's hands trembled violently now. The house felt too quiet again, the way it had the night before the whisper, the night she almost couldn't remember. She covered her mouth to stop a cry from slipping out. Someone knew something. Someone was warning her. She needed to breathe, to think, to move slowly. But as she stumbled back from the desk, she heard footsteps on the stairs. Daniel, coming down. His shadow moved across the hallway floor. Emily closed the laptop and forced her face calm just as he stepped into the room. He smiled. "Ready for bed?" Her heart kicked hard against her ribs. She nodded. Daniel walked toward her, that same calm expression he always used when he wanted her to believe he cared. She tried to steady her breathing. She had to stay ahead. She had to be careful. Because now she knew for sure that something dark was hiding just beneath the surface of their marriage. And Daniel was watching her more closely tonight. Much more closely than usual. Daniel followed Emily upstairs with that calm, steady pace he used whenever he wanted her to
think everything was normal.
She kept her breathing even as they reached the bedroom, but her mind was racing. The email, the earring, the missing money, the memory gaps, Evan's warning. Every sharp piece of the puzzle pressed into her at once, and she felt suddenly trapped in a life that didn't belong to her. Daniel opened the nightstand drawer and took out the amber bottle. He shook out a pill. The sound made her stomach twist. "Here," he said softly, holding it between his fingers like he was offering her something precious. Emily took it with shaking hands. She prayed he wouldn't notice. Daniel's eyes were sharper tonight, too sharp. He watched her face the way a doctor watches a patient about to confess a symptom. "Something on your mind?" he asked. "No," she lied. He smiled at her. "Then take your pill." She put the pill on her tongue. The bitterness hit her instantly. She lifted the glass of water, knowing she had no choice but to swallow this one. If she hesitated now, he would see everything. So she swallowed. He watched her throat carefully, and only when she lowered the glass did he give a satisfied nod. She crawled into bed, trying to calm her pounding heart. The pill, whatever it was, always made her feel the first wave of heaviness within minutes. She needed to stay alert this time, but she already felt the edges of her thoughts blur. Daniel turned off the lamp and slipped into bed beside her. "Good night," he whispered. "Good night," she whispered back, hoping her voice didn't sound as fragile as she felt. The room settled into darkness. Emily lay perfectly still, listening to his breathing grow slow and steady. Her body felt heavy, her head thick. She hated this feeling, this sense of slipping, sinking, losing control. It terrified her more every night. She didn't know how long she fought to stay awake, but at some point sleep dragged her under, hard and fast. She didn't dream. She didn't think. Just darkness. When she woke the next morning, Daniel was already gone. She sat up slowly, rubbing her temples. Her head throbbed. She felt like she'd lost hours. Maybe she had. The bed beside her was perfectly smooth, which made no sense. If Daniel got up earlier, there should have been some sign. Instead, it looked untouched. Her chest tightened. She pushed to her feet and steadied herself against the dresser. She checked her phone. A message from Daniel blinked on the screen. "Ran to a meeting. Be good today. Be good." The words sat heavy in her mouth, even though she hadn't spoken them. She made coffee, but her hands shook too much to drink it. Her nerves felt stretched, thin, close to snapping. In the late morning, her phone buzzed again. She picked it up, expecting Daniel, but the number was unfamiliar. No name, no message preview. Her heartbeat kicked hard. She opened it. The message was short. "You won't survive this if you keep trusting him." Emily almost dropped the phone. She replayed the sentence over and over in her mind until the words pulsed like a warning siren. Someone out there knew. Someone was watching. Someone cared enough or needed her to know enough to reach out again. But who? She typed back, "Who is this?" The message showed as delivered. No reply came. She set her phone down and pressed both palms hard against the counter. Her breathing came shallow. Everything in her life was turning blurry, unstable, frightening. Daniel came home early that afternoon, stepping through the door without a sound. Emily jumped so hard she almost spilled her coffee. "You okay?" he asked. "I didn't hear you come in," she whispered. "I noticed." His eyes scanned her face too carefully. "Rough morning." "Just tired." You say that a lot lately. She tried to steady her breathing.
It's been stressful.
Daniel nodded like he agreed, but his voice was too smooth when he said, "Maybe you should increase the dose tonight. It might help." Every nerve in her body screamed, "No."
Maybe,
she said, forcing a small smile because anything else would be dangerous. Daniel's expression changed. His eyes darkened just a little, like a shadow crossed them. "Emily, sit down." She froze. His tone wasn't gentle anymore. It wasn't soft. It wasn't the voice he used when he wanted her to trust him. It was controlled, hard underneath the calm. She sat slowly. Daniel stood across from her and rested both hands on the back of the chair opposite her. He looked at her like he was choosing his words with great care. "We need to talk," he said. Something cold slid down her spine.
About what?
"You," he said simply. "Your behavior lately."
My behavior?
Daniel let out a long breath, like he'd been holding back for weeks. "Yes, Emily. You're forgetting things. You're accusing people of things that never happened. You're emotional. You're paranoid." Paranoid. The word hit her like a slap.
I'm not paranoid,
she whispered. Daniel tilted his head. "You are. And it's okay, but we need to face it."
I don't think...
"You don't think clearly right now," he interrupted. Her breath caught. Something inside her snapped, very quietly, so quietly he didn't notice. She raised her eyes to him.
Daniel, what exactly do you think is wrong with me?
He hesitated just a moment too long. Then he said, "You're showing the same signs the last one did." The room went dead silent. Emily stared at him.
The last one?
Daniel blinked as if he didn't realize what he'd said. His face shifted, hardened, softened, tried to recover.
What did you say?
Emily whispered. He shook his head quickly. "Nothing. I didn't say anything."
Yes, you did.
"You're imagining things," he said sharply.
No.
Her voice broke.
I heard you.
"Emily," he said through clenched teeth. "Drop it." She pushed to her feet, heart pounding so violently she felt lightheaded.
Who was the last one?
He didn't move, didn't blink. Then he smiled, soft, controlled, sinister in its calmness. "There was no last one," he said. "Sit down before you hurt yourself." She shook her head.
Daniel.
"Sit down." It didn't sound like a request. She sat slowly, chest shaking, breath trapped in her throat. Daniel straightened his shoulders, his calm smile returning like a mask slipping back into place. "You're exhausted. Tonight you'll sleep, and everything will make sense in the morning." Her pulse hammered.
I don't want to take the pill tonight.
He went still, so still it scared her. "What?" he asked. Emily swallowed.
I said I don't want...
"You will," he said, low and sharp. Her breath caught. He leaned over the table slowly, his voice barely above a whisper. "You're not going to start questioning me again. Not after everything I do to take care of you."
I'm not questioning...
"You are." His eyes locked on hers, "and I won't allow it." Her throat closed. Fear trembled through her. Without another word, he walked upstairs. Emily sat alone at the table for a long time, shaking, confused, terrified, and more awake than she had felt in weeks. Later that night, when the bedroom lights were off and the house was silent again, Daniel handed her the pill the same way he always did. But this time his eyes were sharper, colder.
The way he watched her swallow was different, almost hungry for control. Emily lifted the glass with trembling hands. She swallowed. Daniel's gaze locked on her throat, unblinking. When he was satisfied, he kissed her cheek and slipped into bed. The room dimmed into silence. Emily lay there in the dark, tears sliding silently toward her temples. Her mind pulsed with one thought. He knows I'm questioning him. He knows I found something. He knows I'm slipping out of his grip. He whispered about a last one. He denied it. He lied. And tonight he watched me swallow like he was making sure, really sure. Her chest tightened until she could barely breathe. She couldn't do this anymore. She couldn't keep letting herself drift into darkness while he stood over her, while he whispered things she couldn't remember in the morning. Slowly, with shaking fingers, she wiped the tears from her cheeks. Her decision settled inside her like a weight and a weapon at the same time. Tomorrow night, she would not swallow the pill, no matter what happened. Emily lay in bed that night with her heart beating so loudly she was sure Daniel could hear it. He stood beside her, offering the small white pill in the palm of his hand. She accepted it without hesitating. She even smiled a little, the same way she had 100 times before. But this time the smile wasn't fear, it was armor. She placed the pill on her tongue, lifted the glass of water, and swallowed with a slow tilt of her head, the way he wanted, the way he expected, the way she'd practiced in the mirror earlier to make sure she got it right. Daniel watched closely, studying her throat as she swallowed. His eyes softened. "Good," he murmured. "You'll sleep well tonight." Emily nodded. "I hope so." When he turned off the lights and got into bed beside her, she curled onto her side, facing away from him. Her hands trembled beneath the blanket, but she kept them hidden. She waited until she heard his deep breathing, steady and even, before she reached into her cheek with her tongue and pushed the pill to the back of her teeth. She didn't dare spit it out. She didn't dare move. She let it dissolve slowly until it stuck against her gum. Bitter, burning, a reminder of everything she needed to learn tonight. It felt like hours before Daniel moved. Emily kept her breaths slow, calm, the way someone deeply asleep would breathe. She let her muscles relax completely. She forced herself not to twitch, not to shift, not even to swallow too loudly. When Daniel finally sat up, the mattress barely dipped. Emily's pulse thudded painfully in her neck. She sensed him watching her, waiting for the rhythm of her breathing to confirm she was out. Then the darkness shifted. He stood. He walked to the doorway. Paused. Emily waited, forcing her eyelids still. Then she heard it. Soft footsteps returning, coming back. She felt the air change as he moved closer to the bed. Then he leaned down. She felt his presence above her, close enough to graze the edge of her cheek with his breath. She kept her face slack, her lips parted slightly like she was in a deep, medicated sleep. He reached beneath the bed. Something metallic clinked softly. Emily's stomach knotted. She heard a zipper. Then she felt it, the faint pressure of his fingers against her wrist. A pull, the cold touch of a device she didn't recognize. He pressed something to her skin, something that made a soft beep, quiet, controlled. Her mind raced. Is he tracking me? Another beep, another click. He checked her pulse with 2 fingers, held it for a full 10 seconds. Then she felt something far worse. His hand slipped under her pillow. He retrieved something. Paper? A small notebook? She couldn't see, couldn't move, couldn't risk even a flick of her eyelashes. But she felt the shift in the mattress. She wanted to scream. Then Daniel opened the bedroom door wider and clicked on a dim hallway light. It cast a faint glow over him, just enough that when he bent over her again, she saw a glimpse of what he was carrying. A syringe. Her chest tightened violently, her lungs screamed for air, but she didn't move. She kept her breaths soft, steady, slow. He uncapped the needle and lifted her arm gently, as if he were caring for her. Then he froze. Not because she moved, she didn't, but because his phone buzzed in his pocket. A soft vibration that broke the silence. Daniel sighed, annoyed. He set the syringe down on the nightstand quietly, then stepped out of the room to answer the call. Emily waited until his voice drifted down the hallway, sharp and irritated, before she allowed herself a breath that wasn't perfectly even. She didn't know how she didn't break. Every emotion inside her cracked and clawed to the surface. The shock, the horror, the raw betrayal crashed against her ribs like a wave she couldn't hold back anymore. Her mind spun. This wasn't about sleep. It wasn't about stress. It wasn't even about control. He had been drugging her for months, and it was supposed to lead here, to needles, to tests, to something far worse she didn't have the courage yet to fully imagine. Her body trembled. No wonder her memories were missing. No wonder she woke with bruises she couldn't place, headaches she couldn't explain, mornings where she felt like she hadn't been in her body at all. She felt the whole truth crashing down on her like a heavy, cold wave. Every episode, every forgetful moment, every emotional day, engineered. She hadn't been failing. He had been breaking her, piece by piece. When she heard him end the call and walk back up the hallway, she let her body relax again, limp and heavy. Daniel stepped into the room with quiet irritation in his breath. He picked up the syringe with a different energy now, harsher, businesslike. But then he paused. Emily's breath caught. He crouched beside her and touched her forehead with the back of his hand. "Good girl," he murmured. "You're already slipping under." She almost gagged. Daniel picked up the syringe again, lifted her arm, and then he stopped. He pulled his hand back slowly. Something in him shifted. A doubt? A second thought? Or maybe he just remembered something he needed to prepare first. Either way, he set the syringe down again. Then he walked out of the bedroom. This time she listened closely. He walked all the way down the hall, into his office. A door clicked shut. Emily waited one breath, then 2, then 10, then 20. When she finally moved, she did it slowly, every muscle aching from the tension she'd held. She sat up, heart hammering hard enough to shake her entire body. She wiped the bitter paste of the dissolved pill from her gums. Her throat tightened as she looked at the nightstand and saw the syringe still sitting there. Her vision blurred. Tears burned her eyes. She stood, legs unsteady, and crept to the hallway like a ghost. She needed proof. She needed answers. She needed something that could get her out alive. She went to Daniel's office door and pressed her ear against the wood. Papers rustled inside. A drawer opened. He muttered something under his breath. She stepped away before he could hear her. She needed to move fast. Emily hurried back to the bedroom and dropped to her knees at Daniel's nightstand. She checked the drawers. Most were filled with normal things, receipts, charges, business cards. But the bottom drawer was different. It had a lock. Her hands shook as she pressed her fingers along the edges. There had to be a key somewhere. She scanned the room, her gaze catching on Daniel's jacket thrown across a chair. She dug into the pocket.
Her fingers brushed metal, a small silver key. She swallowed hard. Her fingers trembled as she slid the key into the drawer lock. It clicked open with a soft sound that made her spine stiffen in terror. Inside the drawer sat a stack of papers, a thin black folder, an envelope, and something worse. Photos. Her own face stared back at her from the pictures. Asleep, unconscious, expression slack. Her hair spread across the pillow in different angles, different outfits, different nights. Dozens of nights. A sickening chill washed over her. She pushed the photos aside with shaking hands and reached for the black folder. Inside, she found medical reports with her name, reports describing episodes, paranoia, memory lapses, and declining judgment. She flipped through them. Some pages had forged signatures of doctors she'd never met. Others listed medications she had never been prescribed, at least not officially. Her breath shook as she found a document stapled to the back. It was a legal form, a prenup addendum. Her signature was at the bottom, but it wasn't hers. Her throat closed. The last paper in the folder hit her hardest, a financial document detailing changes to her inheritance trust, changes that made Daniel the primary controller of her assets in the event she was deemed mentally unfit. It wasn't a marriage. It was a plan. A long one. A careful one. A trap disguised as love. Her hands trembled so hard the papers rattled. Tears streamed down her cheeks silently. Her whole world, everything she believed about her life, cracked open right there in the dim bedroom. And that was when she heard footsteps downstairs. Slow, measured, familiar. Daniel was leaving the office. Emily shoved the papers back into the drawer, locked it, tossed the key into Daniel's jacket pocket, and wiped her face with shaking hands. She climbed back as silently as she could into the bed and lay down, forcing her body to go limp again. Daniel's footsteps moved up the stairs. Emily forced her breath to slow. The hallway floor creaked under his weight. Her pulse jumped so hard she nearly gasped. Daniel walked into the bedroom doorway, paused, listened. Her heart pounded wildly beneath her ribs, but she kept her breaths soft, deep, even. Daniel stepped inside. The mattress dipped gently as he sat down beside her. He brushed a strand of hair from her cheek with a tenderness that, for the first time, felt like violence. Then he whispered, "You'll thank me soon." Emily's body went cold. He slipped out again and closed the bedroom door quietly. She didn't move until she heard the shower turn on. Every nerve in her body screamed. She needed help. She needed someone, anyone, before daylight came. With shaking limbs, she climbed out of bed again and grabbed her phone. There was only one person she could think to call. Evan. She sent a message with trembling thumbs.
I need to talk. Now.
Evan replied within seconds. Where are you? Her breath stuttered.
In my room. Hurry.
5 minutes later, she saw the soft sound on the back door. She ran downstairs and let Evan inside before anyone could hear. He looked panicked.
What's going on?
Emily's voice cracked. I know everything. I saw the files, the photos, the documents. He's been drugging me, Evan, for months. He's trying to... Evan grabbed her shoulders. Emily, listen. He took a shaky breath. I need to tell you something. You need to hear it. Her pulse hammered.
What?
He swallowed hard. If Daniel gets you declared mentally unstable, he gains full control of your trust fund. His voice dropped. He's been planning this for a long time. Margaret's helping him. Emily felt her knees give. Evan caught her.
Please,
She whispered.
help me. I can't stay here. I'm not safe.
Evan nodded. I'll help you. For the first time that night, she felt a thin thread of hope pull her back from the edge. But she didn't know yet that hope was the cruelest part. Because the next morning, after she barely slept at all, Daniel walked into the kitchen with that calm smile, placed a cup of tea in front of her, and said something that made her blood freeze. So, he murmured lightly, Evan says you're scared of me. Emily's world splintered. Her breath collapsed. Her hands shook. Evan had betrayed her, and Daniel knew everything. Emily froze in the kitchen chair, staring at Daniel while her world tilted sharply under her feet. His voice had been too casual, too soft, too knowing. She forced herself to swallow.
Daniel, what did Evan say?
Daniel smiled, but it wasn't the warm, charming smile she had once believed. This one was smaller, sharper, empty at the edges. He sipped his coffee before answering, letting the silence stretch long enough to make her nerves fray. He said, Daniel murmured, that you came to him last night, frantic, hysterical, talking about, what was it? He tapped his chin lightly. Ah, right. You think I'm drugging you. Emily's fingers tightened around her mug. Her voice came out thin.
I wasn't hysterical.
Daniel raised a brow. No? Because Evan says you were shaking and crying and not yourself. Those were his exact words. Her heart twisted violently. She felt like she was falling. Evan had agreed to help her. He had held her as she cried. He had promised he'd protect her. And then he had run straight to Daniel, straight to the man she feared more than anything.
Why would he say that?
Emily whispered. Daniel leaned back in his chair. Because it's true. She shook her head weakly.
He twisted it.
No, Daniel said simply. You did. Her stomach churned. She tried to breathe, but each inhale felt thin.
Daniel, I was scared. I thought he...
She stopped. Evan's betrayal sat bitter on her tongue. Daniel rose slowly, walking around the table until he stood behind her. His hands rested on her shoulders, heavy and warm, in a way that made her skin crawl. You don't need to worry about Evan, he said softly. He's family. He wants what's best for you. Emily's voice cracked.
No, he doesn't.
Daniel's hands tightened a little. Not enough to hurt, but enough to warn. He told me everything, Emily. Every detail. Even the ridiculous things you thought you found. Her pulse slammed.
Daniel!
You even broke into my drawer. His breath brushed her ear. Did you think I wouldn't know? Emily's entire body went cold. He knew. He knew everything. Her panic rose like a wave threatening to drown her.
I wasn't. I didn't.
You did, Daniel said calmly. You don't hide things well. She stared at the table, tears pooling in her eyes but refusing to fall. If she cried, he'd call it another episode, another symptom, another sign he was right. She forced the tears back. Daniel moved around her and leaned against the counter, arms folded. I didn't want it to come to this, he said quietly. I really tried to help you. She flinched. Help me. Yes. He lifted his shoulders in a small shrug. But the more I help, the more you push back, the more unstable you become. She shook her head. I'm not unstable. Daniel tilted his head at her. You don't remember half your days. You misplace things. You imagine conversations. Last night you told Evan you thought I was hurting you. That isn't normal behavior. She swallowed hard.
I told him because you are hurting me.
Emily. Daniel sighed, disappointed. You're losing it again.
No,
She whispered.
that's not true.
He stepped forward and crouched so they were eye level. His voice softened. You're tired, confused, emotional. You're slipping, and I know it's not your fault. He brushed a tear from her cheek with his thumb. But you have to let me take care of you. Her body wanted to jerk away from his touch, but she couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Tonight, Daniel continued gently, we'll adjust the dose, a little stronger, just enough to stop the panic. Panic surged through her at the word. Stronger. He wanted her unconscious, silenced, gone.
Daniel, please don't. I don't need more pills. I don't want...
He stood abruptly. Stop. The sharpness in his voice cut her off instantly. Emily stared at him, chest trembling. She had reached the breaking point. She could feel it in her bones. Everything she tried to hold together crumbled.
I'm not confused,
she whispered.
You're lying to me.
Daniel's eyes hardened. Emily, think very carefully about what you're saying.
No!
Her voice rose despite her fear. You're the one doing something. You're hiding something from me. You're trying to... He slammed his hand on the table so hard the plates rattled. Emily jumped back in the chair. That is enough. Her breath caught in her throat. Daniel's voice dropped to something low and icy. I have been patient. I have been kind. I have done everything I can to keep you stable.
You drugged me,
she gasped.
You've been...
I did what I had to, he snapped, stepping toward her. Because you don't understand what you're doing. You don't know what's happening in your own head anymore. You're proving it right now. Emily's back pressed against the chair so hard her spine hurt.
Daniel, stop.
Stop what? He asked, raising his arms. Stop protecting you. Stop keeping this family from falling apart because of your condition.
There is no condition,
she cried. Daniel froze. He stared at her. The silence stretched long enough to choke her. Then he leaned down slowly, placing both hands on the table so he was inches from her face. His voice dropped to a quiet, terrifying whisper. You sound exactly like the last one. Emily felt the air leave her lungs.
The last one?
Daniel held her gaze for a heartbeat. 2. 3. Then his expression smoothed. I didn't mean that. She shook her head, voice shaking.
Yes, you did. Who was the last one?
There was no last one, he said quickly. You misheard me. Her voice barely came out.
Daniel, you're scaring me.
Good, he whispered. Maybe you'll finally listen. Emily blinked. That one word hit her like a blow. Good. He straightened and walked slowly toward the counter, his back to her, breathing steady again as if nothing had happened. Tonight, he said, picking up his phone, we start over. A fresh dose. A full reset. Emily's heart pounded so hard she felt dizzy. He continued speaking casually, checking something on his screen. After tonight, you won't have to worry about any of this anymore. You won't feel scared. You won't feel confused. You'll just rest. Her blood ran cold. This wasn't medicine. This wasn't care. This was control. Total, suffocating control. A sound left her throat, small and terrified.
Daniel, please don't.
He interrupted without turning around. Emily, enough. She pressed a shaking hand to her chest.
I don't want to take it anymore.
He turned then, slowly, his expression calm, too calm. Emily, he said softly, you don't get to make that choice. Her eyes widened. If you won't take responsibility for your health, he murmured, I'll do it for you. He stepped toward her, one slow step at a time. She pushed her chair back, but he caught the armrest gently, firmly, and pushed it back to the floor. Sit still, he said. Her breath shook violently.
Daniel, please.
He looked at her with disappointment, almost pity. This behavior is exactly why we're doing this.
What behavior?
She cried. Paranoia, delusion, emotional spiraling. The exact symptoms Margaret warned me about. Margaret. Her knees weakened. She felt sick. Daniel turned away again, opened a cabinet above the counter, and reached inside. Emily watched his arm stretch upward, watched his fingers curl around something small, plastic, and rattling. He pulled it out slowly. A new bottle, not the old one, a different one. Tonight, Daniel said, his voice calm and dreadful, will be the last time you ever question me. His hand tightened around the bottle. The pills inside rattled like bones. Emily's heart stopped. She knew with absolute certainty she wouldn't survive another dose. Not this one. And Daniel knew she knew. That was the point. This was the moment she saw the truth with cold, blinding clarity. If she didn't act tomorrow night, she would never wake up again. Emily didn't sleep that night. She lay awake with her heart beating too loud to ignore, listening to Daniel breathe beside her like nothing was wrong, like he hadn't threatened her life, like he hadn't watched her swallow a pill meant to turn her into nothing. When the sun finally rose, Daniel slipped out of bed, humming under his breath, calm as ever. She waited until she heard the shower start before she moved. Every second counted. She got out of bed fast and went straight to the nightstand. The new pill bottle sat there, the one he'd held so calmly in his hand when he promised she wouldn't question him again. Her hands shook as she unscrewed the cap. Inside were small, chalky tablets. They looked harmless. They weren't. She dumped half into a tissue, wrapped them tight, and shoved them into the bottom of her sock drawer to deal with later. Then she reached into the bathroom cabinet where she'd hidden the vitamins she'd bought 2 months ago and never used. Same size, same shape, same color. Perfect. She swapped every dangerous pill with a harmless one and put the bottle back exactly the same. The way she found it. Angle the label, push the cap twice, slide it toward the back right corner. She checked it twice, 3 times. Then she pulled her phone from beneath the mattress. She opened the recording app. She hit record and slid the device behind the lamp on her nightstand, camera pointed at the bed. Her pulse jumped hard. She didn't know if the angle caught everything, but it didn't matter. It would catch enough. Daniel's footsteps approached, steady and relaxed. Emily slipped under the covers and closed her eyes just as he walked in. "Morning," he said softly.
Morning,
She whispered. He set a mug of tea on her nightstand, the way he always did when he wanted her calm and weak before a fight. "We'll have a better day today," he said. "Last night was emotional." She forced a nod.
I don't want to argue.
"Good," he said, smiling. "Neither do I."
She kept her breathing steady. She had to pull this off, had to keep him talking, had to gather every word, every lie, every slip. Daniel reached into his pocket, the pill bottle. Her stomach twisted. "Take it," he said gently. Emily sat up, hand outstretched. He dropped the pill into her palm. She closed her fingers around it, then lifted it to her mouth with steady hands she absolutely did not feel steady inside. She slipped the pill under her tongue. Bitter, metallic, but harmless. She swallowed water anyway. Daniel watched her throat, satisfied. Good girl. Her hands shook at the words, but she hid it well.
"Can you stay home today?"
she asked quietly. Daniel blinked, surprised. Why?
"I don't want to be alone."
If anything softened him, it was this, her fear, her weakness, the thing he had trained into her. He leaned in and kissed her forehead. Of course I'll stay home. That was all she needed, proximity, time, his confidence, his downfall. She waited 30 minutes, pretending to get drowsy, pretending the pill was doing its work, pretending to fade. Daniel watched her the whole time, seated in a chair, hands folded, studying her like she was a project. When her eyes drooped, he finally stood and walked toward the hall. "I'll be back in a minute," he murmured. The moment he left, Emily sat up fast, grabbed her phone and checked the recording. Still going. Still capturing everything. She needed the final piece. She needed him to say it, to admit it, to show what he really was. The water running in the kitchen signaled he was rinsing out the syringe or setting up something else. She didn't have time to think about it. She lay back down, closed her eyes, let her body go slack. When Daniel came back, he paused in the doorway. "Emily?" His voice dipped low, testing. She didn't move. She kept her breaths slow, heavy, fake. He stepped into the room, shadow stretching across her. "Good," he whispered. "Let's finish this." Emily felt cold spread through her. He came closer, each step measured. Her heart pounded so violently she was sure it shook the mattress. Daniel sat on the edge of the bed. She felt the dip under his weight. Then he brushed her cheek with the back of his hand. "You don't understand how hard this is for me," he whispered, "but you left me no choice." Her stomach twisted. He leaned closer. His breath touched her ear. "You're not safe alone. You can't make rational decisions, and I'm not losing everything because you can't control your emotions." Her lungs burned. Every word seared her skin. Then he said something that froze her in place. "You weren't supposed to find the drawer. Not like that." Her pulse kicked hard. "You weren't supposed to talk to Evan either," he added, voice sharpening. "He talks too much when he's scared." Emily kept her face still, but inside her chest her heart punched against her ribs. Daniel continued, softer now, almost tender. "I told you. You sound like the last one." The last one. The room spun. Daniel sighed and stood. She heard the faint metallic sound of a syringe. Her breath almost caught. "And you know how that ended?" Emily nearly broke her stillness, nearly sat up, nearly screamed. But she held it. She held it all, because she needed every word recorded. She waited until she heard the click of something, plastic hitting the nightstand. Then Daniel leaned closer again. "It's for your own good," he whispered. "You won't remember any of this." He reached for her arm. Then, the downstairs door slammed open. Daniel stiffened. "What the?" A voice sliced through the silence. "Daniel!" Margaret called,
Why's the alarm off?
Emily's eyes snapped open. Daniel froze mid-reach. He whipped his head toward the bedroom door, panic ripping across his face. Not worry, not concern. Panic. "Stay down," he hissed to Emily. But Emily sat up slowly, deliberately. Daniel's expression changed instantly. Fear, fury, calculation, flaring all at once. "What are you
Doing. Lie back down. Emily stared at him with a calm she didn't feel. No. Margaret's heels clicked up the stairs, sharp and impatient. Daniel? Why are you home? What's going on? His breathing quickened. He looked at Emily with wide, angry eyes. Do not say a word. Emily said nothing. Margaret stepped into the doorway. What is? She stopped. She saw the syringe. She saw the pill bottle. She saw the look on Daniel's face, and something inside her cracked.
Daniel,
She whispered.
what did you do?
He snapped. Stay out of it. Margaret rushed forward, voice trembling.
Please tell me you didn't. Not again.
Mother, Daniel warned.
Daniel,
Margaret's voice shot up, almost frantic.
you told me you stopped. You said that girl left you. You said she ran off.
Emily's blood ran ice cold. Girl. Left him. Ran off. The last one.
You told me it was clean.
Margaret said, shaking.
You swore nothing could be traced.
Daniel grabbed her arm sharply. Shut up! Too late. The truth was out. The room froze. Emily stared at them both, Daniel's furious cracking mask and Margaret's trembling shock, and every horror she had buried inside her rose up to the surface. Her voice came out steady. You did this before. Neither answered. You hurt someone, she pressed, eyes hard, and you covered it up. Daniel's jaw clenched. Emily, you drugged her, Margaret blurted. She didn't disappear. You... Daniel slammed his hand against the dresser. Mother! The force made her flinch. Emily didn't move. The truth was here, out loud, uncontrolled. Her phone was still recording every word. Margaret's voice broke. Daniel, what have you done? What have we? He grabbed her wrist. Leave, now. But Margaret didn't move. She stared at him like she was finally seeing the monster in her own son. And that was when Emily realized something important. They were going to destroy themselves. All she had to do was let them talk. Daniel turned slowly toward her. His eyes were wild now, stripped of charm, stripped of calm, stripped of everything he used to hide behind. He reached for the pill bottle. Emily's heart slammed against her ribs. He held it tightly in his hand, breathing hard. This, Daniel said, low and furious, ends tonight. Daniel's hand closed around the new bottle of pills so tightly the plastic cracked. His chest rose and fell in fast, angry breaths. His mask, every polished, charming piece of it, was gone. The man standing in front of her wasn't a loving husband or a careful caretaker. He was the danger she'd been sleeping beside, still breathing beside. Margaret stepped backward, her face pale. Daniel, stop. You can't do this again. He spun toward her. You ruined everything. She wouldn't have known unless you opened your mouth. I opened my mouth because you lied, Margaret shouted. Her voice cracked. You told me she disappeared on her own. You said that girl left town. You said I said what you needed to hear, he snapped. I said what kept you safe. Emily's heart hammered as the words tore through her. That girl never left. He drugged her like this. He planned something worse. She reached for her phone behind the lamp, fingers trembling. She slid it under the blanket where they wouldn't see it. It was still recording. Daniel pointed at Margaret. "I fixed that mess, and I'll fix this one too." Emily found her voice. "You're not fixing anything." Daniel's head whipped toward her. "Shut up." "No," she said, steady and strong. "I'm done shutting up." He took a step toward her so fast Margaret gasped. Emily held her ground. For the first time she didn't shrink from him, didn't fold, didn't pretend to be small. "What did you do to her?" Emily asked quietly. Daniel's jaw twitched. She was unstable. "You made her unstable," Emily shot back. "The same thing you've been doing to me."
Margaret shook her head, horrified.
You promised me,
She whispered to Daniel.
you promised me that girl was an accident.
Daniel hissed, "She shouldn't have fought me." Emily's stomach twisted. There it was, the truth, bare and vicious. He looked back at Emily, eyes cold. "You're following the same path, the paranoia, the accusations, and now you're digging into things that aren't your business."
You made them my business,
she said. He took another step. Margaret tried to grab his arm. He shoved her back, hard. She hit the dresser with a gasp. Emily instinctively moved toward her, but Daniel raised the bottle like a weapon. "Sit down." Emily didn't move. "Sit down," he repeated, voice shaking with fury. "You want the truth? Fine. You want to hear it all? Good." He took a breath, the kind that comes right before someone finally snaps. "I drugged you because you get in the way." Margaret flinched. Daniel continued, words spilling out like venom. "Your money is tied to you being stable. Your trust fund, your estate, your family's assets. I needed access. I deserved access. But you," he jabbed a finger toward her, "were unpredictable. You questioned me. You wanted control. You wanted boundaries." Emily swallowed hard.
So you took them from me.
"You didn't need them," he said sharply. "You don't make good decisions. You never did." She didn't blink.
You wanted power.
He didn't deny it. "I wanted peace, stability, a wife who didn't ruin everything by thinking too much, someone I could manage." Margaret whispered.
Daniel, please stop.
He ignored her completely. "Do you know how easy it was? Every time you took the pill, I had hours. Hours to create a version of our life that made sense. To move money, to adjust legal files, to talk to doctors, to document your episodes. Everything you remember, everything you think you remember, I shaped it. I made it." Emily felt a tremor move through her chest, but her voice stayed steady. "You made me sick." "I made you dependent," he corrected. "There's a difference." Margaret burst into tears.
Daniel, what have you done?
He snapped at her again. "Be quiet. You helped me. Don't pretend you didn't know the plan." Margaret pressed a shaking hand to her mouth.
Not like this.
He laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "You can't bail now. We're too deep. She knows everything." Emily's fingers brushed her phone under the blanket. She hit send. The recording, the photos, the documents, everything she had gathered, sent out in one blast to her lawyer, her parents' trustees, and the police contact she still had from years ago. The moment she hit send, she felt air return to her lungs. Daniel didn't notice the movement. He was too busy unraveling in front of them. "You were supposed to be easy," he spit. "You were supposed to be grateful I took care of you." Emily met his eyes.
You never took care of me. You drugged me so you could steal from me.
"I kept you safe," he roared.
Safe from what?
Emily demanded. Daniel froze. His voice dropped to a whisper. From yourself.
No, she said. You were protecting yourself from the truth.
He stiffened. I won't let you destroy everything I built. She stood. Daniel's jaw clenched so hard a vein bulged at his temple. Sit down.
No,
she said again, louder this time. He lunged. Emily didn't move. She stood tall, eyes locked on him as he reached for her arm, and then stopped cold. Sirens wailed in the distance. Margaret gasped.
Daniel.
Emily looked him straight in the eye.
I sent everything.
His face drained of colour. What? You whispered.
The documents, the photos, the recordings, all of it.
She didn't blink.
They know. It's over.
Daniel stared at her like she'd stabbed him. Then he snapped.
He grabbed the pill bottle and hurled it across the room, screaming incoherently, pacing like an animal trapped in a cage. Margaret backed into the corner, hands shaking violently. You ruined everything, he shouted at Emily. Everything! Do you hear me? You… Footsteps pounded up the stairs. Voices. Police. Daniel froze mid-sentence, eyes wild. Emily didn't step back, didn't hide, didn't shrink. Officers burst into the room. Daniel spun, shouting something angry and incoherent, but they took him down fast. Margaret sobbed, collapsing to her knees, shouting half-formed explanations that only made things worse. Emily didn't move. She watched, silent, steady, whole. As they dragged Daniel away, he twisted his neck to look at her. His voice cracked with rage and disbelief. You think this is justice, he spat. You think you're stronger than me? Emily held his gaze. No, I'm just finally awake. He was hauled down the stairs, screaming. Margaret was escorted out next, still sobbing that she never meant for it to go this far. Evan, coward that he was, turned everything over within hours to save himself. Emails, texts, phone call logs. He folded faster than a paper cup in the rain. By the end of the week, the Hawthorne name was everywhere for all the wrong reasons. Drugging, fraud, abuse. A missing woman from years ago resurfaced in headlines. Investigations reopened. Their empire didn't burn. It collapsed, crushed under its own lies. Emily walked out of that house with nothing but a small bag and her phone. But she felt lighter than she had in months, years, maybe her entire marriage. Her lawyer met her outside the station that same day. The trustees reinstated you, he told her. Full control, no restrictions. She nodded. Good. Because she wasn't handing her life to anyone, ever again. She didn't hide her scars. She didn't hide the truth. She didn't hide the fear that still lived inside her ribs like a faint echo. But she did something stronger. She lived. Weeks later, as she stood in her new apartment, small, warm, hers, she felt the weight of the past settle in her chest, not as something crushing, but as something honest. Her mind had never been broken. Her trust had. And she had rebuilt it, piece by piece. One quiet night she sat at her kitchen table and whispered the truth she learned the hard way. She didn't write it down. She didn't post it online. She simply said it out loud, for herself. When someone tries to convince you your mind is broken, she murmured, check who benefits from the cracks. She let out a slow breath. Because monsters thrive in silence. But the moment you stop pretending, her voice sharpened. The truth gets loud. And Emily, finally, felt free.